Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fenske. Quincy, Illinois is among the thousands of cities across the country where demonstrations against police brutality have taken place in recent days. Illinois' Gem City has a population of about 40,000 people, and on Sunday, hundreds turned out for a vigil in honor of George Floyd. And joining us today to talk about what's happening on the protest front far from the big cities is Jessica Benton. She is one of the organizers of Sunday's vigil. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you?
And we're also joined today by Renee Houston. She's also a Quincy resident and has been doing some protesting of her own in recent weeks. So Michelle, welcome.
Thank you.
Michelle, I understand that about a week ago, you went by yourself to a busy intersection and you held up a sign that read Black Lives Matter. What inspired you to do that?
I think that it's about time that there needs to be a change. It's way overdue. Police brutality. There just needs to be a change.
And so you were out there advocating for that change. What kind of response did you get from passersby?
I got a few honks, but there was also a lot of racism.
People shouting mean things, or, I mean, we don't want to hear any bad words, but give us a sense of what you endured.
Driving by, smoking with their exhaust pipes.
Trying purposely to sort of get the exhaust in your face?
Yes.
Okay. That's a bit disturbing. I understand there was another demonstration being held that day you ended up crossing paths with. What was that moment like?
I was blown away. It was beautiful. I had no idea that anyone else was concerned in my town, and to see Radiance that day, it was truly a blessing.
And Radiance is a protest organizer there in Quincy. She was out there. You guys ran into each other. You felt good to know other people supported this cause. And as we mentioned in our intro, this cause is taking off in Quincy. Jessica, are you surprised by the amount of community support that's been drawn to this movement in just the last couple weeks?
I was. It was very eye-opening and extremely surprising.
Now, you helped organize the memorial vigil. It was in Quincy's Washington Park on Sunday, and the Herald-Whig, the newspaper in Quincy, estimated the crowd at 500 people. What was it like to see that kind of turnout in Quincy?
Well, at first, as people started arriving, let me back up. The event on Facebook had less than 200 people saying that they were going to attend. So I figured maybe 100 people might show up. And as people started arriving, and more people started arriving, and more people, I was like, oh my word, this is crazy. I cannot believe the amount of support.
Yeah, I mean, that must have just been an incredible feeling.
It was just mind-blowing to know that we had reached that many people with our message to come out and let's do something.
Now, I understand you are not a native of Quincy. You're from Texas originally. What is it like being a Black woman in Quincy?
There's still the challenges here in Quincy. The challenges are not as severe or as in the South. However, there are still challenges here. You still have comments occasionally. The biggest thing that I notice in Quincy is the lack of the representation for the Black community. And in all parts of the city, all the boards, all the parts of the government, there's a complete lack of Black representation.
That does seem like a problem. I mean, is that something that prior to this moment where now you're getting hundreds of people turning out, have people been talking about that issue or wanting to do something about that issue?
I'm not sure if people have been talking about it. It hasn't been a big topic of conversation. However, since I'm not a native here, I don't know some of the people that have been in this community for a long time or who have, maybe passed away and were leaders in the community. But of what I hear is that it seems like the baton was never passed. So those of the next generation were never inspired to climb the same ladder. And so when you don't have that baton passed or that hand to pull you up, there's nothing there.
That makes sense, and that's that's a problem that can be hard to fix. Michelle, you're here. You're a white woman who obviously believes very strongly that Black Lives Matter. That's why you were out there with that sign. What's your sense among white people who make up the majority of Quincy? Do you think, for the most part, there's a silent majority that supports cracking down on police brutality, would like to see racism stop, or do you think it's more widespread there than we want to realize?
I'm hoping it's more widespread. I think the problem here is the white community doesn't understand the issues that the Black community is going through. So we just need to sit back and we need to listen and be allies.
Jessica, how would you describe the overall police community relations in Quincy?
So I don't personally see it as violent. However, there are definitely places that can be improved, areas of improvement. I have seen live videos from my friends on Facebook. I remember one in particular. It was a gentleman. It was a nice gentleman that I know doesn't get in any kind of trouble. He said, "This is my third traffic stop today, and they can't give me a reason why they keep stopping me. They just keep stopping me for really no reason." And he recorded his entire traffic stop. "Well, officer, why are you stopping me?" He said, "Well, I think you rolled past the last stop sign. I'm just going to give you a warning. It's nothing serious." But it was his third time in the same day. We live in a population of 40,000. The African-American population here is around 4,000.
So there is some tension there. I mean, as you say, it's not violent, but for this young man to be pulled over 3 times, that certainly seems to speak to something there.
Absolutely, definitely. There's always areas of improvement and addressing, bringing to the forefront training and things to our officers to understand that this community is not just theirs; it's ours.
Have police been involved in attending some of these recent demonstrations?
Absolutely. I in my day job, I'm a photographer. So during the protest that Michelle and Radiance, I caught the tail end of it and went out there and took some pictures. And I was pleasantly surprised that there were 3 officers there. One walks up to Radiance and tells her, "Make sure you get something to eat. Make sure you get something to drink. Don't be out here wearing yourself out." He picked up the water, put it in the back of her vehicle. Like on Sunday, we had 12 officers there in uniform. People in the community asked, "Are y'all nervous to have that representation there? Like intimidating?" And I said, I believe that they're there in solidarity. And until it happens and we see it, that's what I'm going to trust. And when they started showing up and they came with signs, they came with signs to protest with us. The police chief stood on that stage with us. They walked down the street with us. That was like, and the police chief said that the officers in Minnesota, they're not part of their team. That's the bad apples. That's not what they represent.
So they really repudiated the actions of those Minneapolis police officers.
Absolutely. And in the town with the politics and stuff that they have here, I was, again, pleasantly surprised.
We heard from so many listeners in Quincy who were involved with these protests or just attended them and received so many lovely tweets and emails of support. I don't have nearly enough time to get into all of them today, but I did want to read a little bit of a sampling. Marcy Corrine tweeted, "I attended the vigil and found great solace in the number of people who showed up. Police, mayor, people of color, white, young, and old, all joined to support our Black community. It was moving and inspiring." Katie Holensteiner tweets, "Quincy has a strong, beautiful, vibrant Black community. Yet in a predominantly white area, people of color represent a small percentage of the city's population. So for community leaders, our police department, and city officials to rally around this movement was very powerful. So proud." We also got an email from Randy, and he writes, "I think the protests in Quincy and surrounding communities are an amazing and much-needed development for our area. This area has had a troubled history with race relations, and there's more diversity than I think people that live here now now even know. However, with an outspoken white majority, there are many that are outspoken in their racism. I attended the vigil on Sunday as a white ally, and I was happily surprised by the size of the turnout and awed by the strength of the Black voices in our community. I see the opportunity for progress in our community, and again, just lovely to get some of these messages. Jessica, one thing I find myself wondering, were these kind of demonstrations happening in Quincy after the death of Michael Brown back in 2014?
I didn't actually live in Quincy in 2014, so I wasn't witness to it. But of what I've heard is because of the proximity to St. Louis, most of the people who were outraged they traveled to St. Louis because that's one of our major metro areas that we do sometimes on a daily basis. So they just joined our brothers and sisters in St. Louis and in Ferguson with those rallies.
Michelle, for you, were you an activist at that point in time back in 2014?
I was just driving by St. Louis at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to witness it all.
So you got to see it in 2014 in St. Louis. What do you think is different this time around that just so many people are turning out in cities all over the country, not just the major cities?
It's hard to deny the death total. It just keeps going. So I think that has a lot to do with it, sadly.
The fact that just more and more people of color continue to be killed, that you think is a big driver there.
Yeah.
Jessica, do you think that's it as well? That just the totality of it seems to be getting to people?
So I've been silent on social media for a long time because I am a business owner and try not to get into the politics. It's just but this, not just for me, but I believe for the entire Black community and the citizens of the United States, this is not only about police brutality. This is like the last drop in the perpetual bucket that overflowed of Black men being killed by police. There's police brutality every day, against white men. But a white man doesn't get killed by an officer because he's white.
Mm-hmm.
A Black man, it's racially motivated. The killing of our Black, not just our Black men, of our Black people, and it's like the last drop in the bucket on the heels of the lady in Central Park, on the heels of the other two. His last name was Ahmed.
Yes.
Ahmad and Breonna Taylor, right on the heels of those. So you're just dropping another drop in that bucket and it's overflowed. It's like, stop now.
Mm-hmm. People
make change.
People have reached the point where they've had enough, and that seems to be happening coast to coast. So Jessica Benton, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us the scoop on what's going on in Quincy.
You're very welcome.
And Michelle Renee Houston, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
St. Louis Public Radio's The Gateway gives you the day's news first thing every weekday morning. From the ever-evolving relationship between St. Louis City and County to developments in the Missouri and Illinois state capitals and reports from our correspondents in Rolla and the Metro East. We put it all in a roughly 10-minute package with clarity and context. Download The Gateway wherever you get podcasts.